Good morning. Thank you so much for coming to see me when you're probably either still drunk, hungover, hungry, whatever. My job is to provide value for you guys. So what I want you guys to focus on is questions. All of this content that I'm about to show you will be made available to you if you follow me on Twitter. So all this will be yours. So don't worry about taking notes. Worry about asking me questions if I'm not being clear, because this is really, I'm here for you, and my job is to make sure that you have the information you need. So today we're actually going to talk about how you guys can do your own PR. I'm a firm believer that startups should not be paying for PR. So I'm going to be giving you every tip I have for free, which, yeah, probably will put me out of business, but at least you guys will be good. So don't forget me when you're rich and important, okay? So just a couple words about Ballou PR and why I'm qualified to have this conversation. We're an international PR firm with offices in London and Paris and Berlin, starting November 1st. I'm very happy to say we're opening in Berlin, and I will be moving to Berlin to start the office. So any of you who think that's a scary prospect might want to move out of Berlin now. And we work with high-growth technology companies, business to business, business to consumer, 17 people and counting. And some of the great things we've had fun doing have been the sale of MusiWave to OpenWave for over 100 million euros, the entry of Facebook into France right up to their IPO, and helping introduce Eventbrite and now Zendesk into Europe. So we've had a lot of fun doing what we've been doing for the last 10 years. And again, I actually also want to point out that a lot of PR firms, they make it sound like PR or getting media is like magic, and they have the keys to it, and if you don't pay, you're never going to get the media, which is total bullshit. Don't buy that. The whole point of this is for you guys to have the tools that you can to get media attention, and also to take you through the questions about, is it right for me to be getting media attention right now? So, before we start, let's talk about a couple things. The first thing is that PR does not replace sales. It works along with it, and it also takes time. If you really want your message to get out to the media exactly when you want it, using the words that you choose and the day that you want it, that's called advertising, right? PR involves talking to journalists, convincing them of your story, winning them over, and hopefully they're going to write something positive about you. But it's about a relationship. You can't just show up, turn out your press release, and expect journalists to write about you. Much like being a good neighbor, they need to get to know you, they need to understand what you're doing, they need to put you in context. So, it's just not as easy as, oh, I'm going to talk to a journalist and get a story. Sometimes things happen like that magically, and we'll talk about why that happens. So, I get this question all the time, right? And you guys know this. Dave McClure will have told you this, but I'm going to repeat it again. The first thing you need to do is get a good product. Focus on nailing it, right? PR doesn't make a company, just because you get a great article in TechCrunch doesn't mean you're all of a sudden going to have great sales and everybody's going to ignore that what your turnout is kind of half-assed. I also am going to argue that if you're still working on your product, this is not a necessity. Many people think it's a magic bullet and that it's going to fix your problems. It's going to help you get sales. It's going to help you get partners, customers, funding. What PR does is it puts a spotlight on your company and what you're doing. And if you guys aren't ready for it, it can sometimes backfire horribly. Remember, you don't get another chance to make a first impression. So the first thing I'm going to ask you guys to do is really take a good, long, hard look at yourself and decide if you need PR. So you know what I'm going to say. There are other ways to accomplish to accomplish what you need than PR, and think very, very carefully about getting PR, and ask yourselves: are you cultivating the people who can help you drive your product and your company forward right now? So be working with those first 1,000 people who can become your number one fans, who can evangelize you. Do little tricks like, if you know of a competitor, look at their Twitter feed, who's following them, who cares about this issue. Cultivate them. That doesn't mean send them spammy emails or Twitters. That means just get involved with them, start talking to them, find your champions, right? Because for everything that each one of you are doing, there's 10 people who care desperately about it. Find them, right? Cultivate them. Build your early network of supporters. So, okay, great, Colette. Let's talk about PR. I'm going to blow your mind about what PR is. Most of you think that PR is about media relations. It is so much more than that. And in fact, I've distilled it down to this. It's about building a community. And these people are not only employees and users, it also includes your competition, right? It's about building an entire community, understanding what's going on around everything that you're doing and what your business is. So, okay, what is PR? These are the basics. And again, all this content is going to be available to you. Don't worry about, you can take photos of it if you want, but it's going to be available to you on SlideShare. All right? So when we actually sit down and start to devise a public relations strategy for a company, one of the first things we do is we delve deeply into your company to understand what your key messages are. What are key messages? They're the things that you have to get across in an elevator pitch, right? The who, what, where, when, why, and who cares. So, and you hear about elevator pitches. You have a 30-second elevator pitch, you have a 2-minute one, you have a 5-minute one. Depends on, you might be pitching on stage, or you might be meeting Dave McClure in an elevator and you have exactly 30 seconds to get him interested in what you're doing. But these are the key messages. You saw yesterday on stage, Dave and I were trying to get people to get to the point immediately, right? That's what key messaging is. It's getting to the point immediately. It's finding out what is important about what you do and how it's going to affect the person you're talking to. Who are people that you're trying to reach with PR? Potential customers, potential investors, probably the top two, right? Maybe partners. Each of these people are going to want to know something special about your company, and you need to be zoning in on them and delivering the right message at the right time. That's all key messages are. Don't be scared by key messages. You already have 90% of them in your head. You know what they are. It's just an exercise that you need to get them out and write them out. Of course, PR involves media training, which means learning how to talk to the media. I get nervous talking to the media too, especially live media. If you're not nervous talking to the media, you're an idiot, because it is scary. There's always mistakes you can make. So we actually train people to talk, and the way you can do your own media training is you can know the basic questions. What are you going to get asked every single time? What do you do? Who do you sell to? Do you have customers? You've seen these questions over and over again. Again, in the Roasted with Dave, you saw the questions he asked. You know you're going to be asked these questions, so be prepared. Practice, right? I mean, it's a given what you're going to be asked. Of course, there's writing press materials and distributing them. These are things like fact sheets, what do you do, etc. Of course, the press release, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And then there are things called proactive pitching. A lot of you guys are used to seeing reruns of The West Wing, and they call a press conference and everybody takes down notes, or they send out a press release and everybody picks it up. Okay, really, 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 a press conference is for really big news. The chances that any of you guys will be in a press conference is really small, right? They're not used that much anymore. Only for big news, IBM buys Apple. Okay, that's going to be a press conference, right? Because you have to distribute all that news simultaneously to all the journalists at the same time, right? Most of you guys won't. I'm going to encourage you not even to get caught up too much in the press release. Press releases take time, and they kind of dumb down the news. What's really fun is pitching a journalist. Where a journalist can actually see the passion on your face, ask you questions, get involved in what you're doing. So we do proactive pitching. Let me draw you a picture. Every morning at Ballou PR in our offices worldwide, okay, three offices, every morning we're going through the press to look at what is the headlines of the day and how that lines up to what our clients do. So by 10 o'clock in the morning, email sitting in my inbox right now, we have analyzed where we can jump or piggyback onto the news with our current clients. You guys can do that too. Look at the news. Is there something that maybe you want to comment on? You want to contact that journalist and say, hey, you didn't think about this angle of the story, but have you thought about this? So that's called proactive pitching or piggybacking. It's a super effective way for you to start getting your voice into the conversation, because what you're doing is you're offering a journalist expert advice. And that's what they want. If you start working with a journalist and showing that you know something about the subject, you're credible. Everybody knows that if you show up with your press release and say, please write about me, Okay, but change the dynamic. Provide them with something. Become invaluable. Become a source of information for them. That makes you a trusted resource, and then they're far more likely to start engaging with you about your company when the time comes. It's a give and take. Opinion pieces, that's when you write to the, you can write an opinion piece to the editor. Media tours are when we actually, I'll give you an example, we took a large media tour to Russia and walked them around to interesting Russian companies in April. Of course, market analyst relations, these are Gartner working, and not all of you, in fact, very few of you are going to have to work with market analysts. They've become less and less important. However, they are important if you're doing an enterprise sale. Speaker placements at conferences. When you're standing on this stage, it makes you an authority. Okay, not me, you. And the media sees that, and they realize that you might have something interesting to say. Again, you're a source of information. They're more likely to come and talk to you. So we actually work hard to get people at speakers' spots at conferences to also allow them to talk about their company and talk about, of course, their key messages. And finally, awards. A lot of you guys know about this, startup competitions, awards, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Okay, Colette, just tell me how to get PR, right? Yeah, is that what you guys are waiting for? Yeah, you're waiting for the magic. All right, okay. So you need to understand the elements of news. Everybody thinks that their baby is the most beautiful baby in the world, right? All of us think our companies are the coolest, most important things in the world, and they are, all right? But you have to be objective about your company. You have to realize what's going to be news, right? So news are things like, do I have a new product? Do I have customers? Expansion failure, et cetera. Things that can be news can be a change in direction. Business as usual, but a new customer. Well, my God, if you sign Coca-Cola, that's pretty interesting, especially if you're a small startup. If you get a heavy hitter to join you, that validates you. What if you bring in like this top-notch CMO? That's news. The media might be really interested in that. Let's talk about what is not news. All right. Yeah, I heard the laughter. Thank you for that. My favorite is when a client or a competitor to one of my clients shows up in the media, and the client calls me up and says, but our product is really good. Can we write a press release and tell the journalist to cover ours too? No, that's not the way it works. Okay, journalists get annoyed with that kind of stuff. You don't want to ever be reactive, right? There are going to be times in your company's life when you do have to be reactive, crisis communications, but you don't want to be constantly chasing after what the competition or similar companies are doing. That puts you on the back foot, it puts you in a defensive position, and it means your competition is dictating your strategy. Don't let it happen. Always be on the offensive. All right, so let's talk about PR how-tos and how do you determine your approach? How do the journalists, what filter are they using to decide what goes into the news every day on their blogs, et cetera? And these are the elements. Again, I won't take you through each one of these because they're kind of self-evident, but remember, news is about immediacy. It's things that are happening. It's connecting trends. Maybe there's a trend of 3 things, and what's the commonality between them? That's what news is. You can take a look at, at TechCrunch right now, the next web, what's in there, right? Take a look at the last day, given what I've just told you, and look at what's in there. You'll see there's an opinion piece by me in the next web, right? So, Ballou PR is doing its own PR. There's an opinion piece that I wrote. But you'll also see that they're news. Things like launches, scandal, all that. That's what makes news. And all you need to do is be objective, look at what you guys are doing, whether it's what the company's doing or whether the company is on a trend, on the back of a trend, and apply it back to the journalist. Okay? What we do isn't rocket science, and that's why I can sit here and teach you how to do it. So let's talk about ways to get coverage. We've talked about the press release. And again, I'm going to actually take you through a press release, and you can steal it and use it for yourself. Just change the name. But when we talked about surfing the news agenda, piggybacking, looking at the news every morning, what is this connecting back to something that you're doing that you can comment on? Of course, case studies are always great. Reporters love that. Case studies do have to have proof points. They like numbers, they like data. They love a customer that's willing to say, this is awesome. Of course, you might have product reviews. Again, we've talked about byline articles, letters to the editor. And one thing I want to draw your attention to is editorial calendars, because I realize that people don't really know what that is. Big publications have advertising schedules. Let's assume we're talking about a monthly publication, right? So they know what they're going to focus on in January, February, March, April, May. Automotive 1 month. Maybe it's going to be, vacations and hotels the next. That can be incredibly useful to you all, because you can look and see what the next year is going to look like. They're looking to attract advertisers, but you're looking to place your story. So you can already see what they're planning to do and pitch them ahead of time. So it's really worth, if you have media that you're especially interested in, ask them if they had an editorial calendar. So some documents to prepare. I talked about key messages, and I saw a couple eyes go like this, so let's talk a little more in depth about what key messages are. As I said, it's the who, what, when, where, how, and actually, I left it out, who cares about your company. It should be short and sweet. It needs to be supported with data. I'll give you a perfect example. One of our clients is an investment bank, small boutique investment bank, and they said that they are the largest investment bank in Europe. In terms of what? You have the biggest office space? Are you the fattest? What are you? And so we forced them to define their terms, and it was in terms of deal size, in terms of the amount of deals. Define your terms. You can't just say, we're the largest, we're the best, we're the biggest. Any journalist, especially if they're in a bad mood, is going to go straight for you and start to poke holes in that, and it's going to be a tough interview. So make sure you define your terms. And by the way, guys, don't exaggerate. Tell the truth. 2 reasons. Telling the truth is nice, and you will be found out. We have side conversations all the time. In fact, I had one yesterday with a very well-known journalist who's here at this conference about who tells the truth and who doesn't, and who he will not interview or quote. Pretty powerful stuff. So other things to have prepared, and again, these are just one-pagers. Be able to talk about, a quick bio of the key managers, why are you guys the ones who are going to take this rocket ship up, into the stratosphere? I have experience. I've done this for 10 years. Those are the things that you want to be putting in a bio so that a journalist appreciates that you're the one to do this. If you have testimonials from clients, that's great. And then actually one thing I want to talk about is this boilerplate. A boilerplate, and I'll show you in the press release we're going to go through, is that last paragraph in any press release that talks about who you are. It actually is fantastic for becoming your elevator pitch, so that's why we're going to focus on it. Now, one other thing I'm going to suggest is that you have an internal document, a question and answer document, with the questions you're going to be asked that does not get distributed to the press. It's only for you guys to get used to it, including any difficult questions that you might get asked. How do you know you're going to get asked difficult questions? Do you deal with minors, children, are you selling or working or collecting data on children? You're probably going to get asked some difficult questions, right? Another one of our clients is a secondary ticketing service called Seatwave in the UK. And selling secondary tickets, ticket touting, is a very sensitive subject to the British people. They just hate it. And so we know we're going to get asked every single time, isn't this wrong? Isn't this morally wrong? And so we have to have an answer set up every single time. We know in every interview, even though we get interviewed 3 times a day, it's going to come up. Just have those things ready. Be comfortable giving these answers. Okay, I've built up to it, so let's go for the press release. So press releases are pretty basic. Press releases are a stake in the ground. It's the way you want to say it, how you want it to be taken in. It doesn't mean that it's going to be picked up by the media the way you wrote it, but it is a stake in the ground. Sometimes a press release isn't even for the media. Sometimes it's just the record, what you want to have said forever, indexed on your website, etc. Right? So think of it as a stake in the ground, a starting point. The first 2 sentences, which we call the topic sentence and the subheader, are the most important. The next most important thing is the first paragraph. Why? The iPhone or the BlackBerry rule. Let's face it, most journalists are not going to get past any of that. And if you don't grab their attention immediately, it gets deleted. So these are the most important parts. Let's look at one. It's an oldie but a goodie. We wrote it for wildfire, okay? We grab the attention right away. Wildfire launches a new way to measure brand engagement. That's pretty interesting. Everybody's interested in monetizing. Brands want to monetize. And of course, we mentioned Facebook. So that was good. The second line also grabs attention. And what we're trying to do is just try to get the journalist to call you back, to email you, right? To get in touch, to engage. And then the first paragraph has every ounce of information they need to decide whether they're going to go the next step and talk to you. The rest is like blah, 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 blah. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't be good, it shouldn't be full of information, but assume that the rest isn't going to get read. Which is why I always put the quotes, because everybody wants to have a quote in these things. I always put them at the bottom, and I insist that they go at the bottom. Now, let's take a little look. This is a boilerplate. Like I said, all this is going to be up on SlideShare for you guys to steal, but this is a really well-written boilerplate. And I don't say that because my team did it, because actually this actually came mostly from Wildfire. But everything you need to know, right? Now, this is not your elevator pitch, because the first thing you say to Dave McClure is not, "Hi, we're based in Redwood City," right? The first thing you say to Dave is, "We do this, and this is how we make money." But the elements are all in here. Another thing that's always important is to have links. So you'll see that in this press release, we put as many links without being obnoxious as possible. But this is a good press release. It gives the information. Press releases are factual. You should not be saying, "We're huge and awesome and wonderful." Keep it factual, keep it basic. Well, let's talk about getting this press release out into the hands of the people who matter. You can always email your press release. Most journalists do not like, and sometimes even will not accept, attachments. So the little trick here is, sure, put it in an attachment, but copy and paste the text into the email that you're sending. That is such an important rule, I'm going to say it again. Copy and paste the text of your press release into the email, right? Because a lot of them are just deleting. Ask Mike Butcher how many pitches he gets a day, right? He needs to realize if it's important right then and there. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this as well. Who are your main press targets? Another big piece of advice for all of you is to choose 3 journalists or influencers, because it might not even be a journalist, who matter to you and who you're going to try to cultivate. Don't go for 10, that's too many. Choose 3 people who really, really matter to you. Do your homework, see who they talk to. That's the beautiful thing about social networking, is you can stalk everybody and figure out who their spheres of influence are. Choose those people and find a way to engage them. Some of them will be media. So by the time you've hopefully gotten to when you need media, you've done a little bit of cultivating, you've used some of the tips I've given you already, and you know who your press targets are. An embargo, this is a tricky one, because you've probably, if you watch and been reading TechCrunch over the years, you realize that some journalists honor embargoes and they don't. What's an embargo? An embargo is when you give a press release to somebody and say, this news is not being released to the rest of the world until this time and date, but I'm giving it to you first. You take a risk that a journalist is going to break an embargo. The real risk is, of course, that if you have something super secret and it violates laws and you get in trouble because you've released news that you shouldn't have. Most of our news isn't kind of that crucial, but you can upset a partner or a customer if you release news early. So think carefully about embargoes. I'm happy to say on the side, not out loud, who I trust with embargoes and who I don't. So come see me after. But the trick is that you think carefully before you give somebody something exclusively. Let's also talk about what an exclusive is, because an exclusive actually ties back to the idea of an embargo. An exclusive is when you say, okay, I've got 5 media who are really interested. The Next Web, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, Wired. I'm going to give one of these guys the first chance at this so they can write first. You'll notice that media compete with each other, right? A lot of them want to have things first. Who competes with each other? Well, mostly, in my world, it's the Next Web and TechCrunch. And unfortunately, I love them both dearly, so I don't like to choose, because these are my friends, I like them, I respect them as journalists. And sometimes, though, we have to decide, that we're going to give a piece of news to one or the other. If you have to make that decision, know why, and also understand that the other one's probably going to be pissed off at you for a while. Just is. It's like the playground. Another way to distribute, and I ask you guys to think very carefully before you do this, because again, I don't want you spending money you don't have to, is wire distribution. You've heard of Business Wire and PR News Wire. These are services that actually just kind of, you put your press release up there, and news services, publications around the world can pull it down and drop it into their blog, their newspaper if they want. It's a paid service. It's usually by words, like the first 400 words might be €1,000, and then every 200 words is more. They also do translation. Think carefully before you use this. There are a lot of free services, but my guess is that if you follow the instruction I've given you, which is know who your targets are, know who the 3 key people are, you don't need to be paying for extra services like this yet. When you get to Series A, yeah, okay, we can talk, but right now, no, save your money. All right, so how to pitch your story. You hear me talking a lot about pitching. Pitching is just talking to them about your news. So as I encouraged you before, get to know your sphere of influence. Who cares about what you're doing? Get involved. Are you talking to them? Do you have a company that sells, doggy food bowls? Well, who are the people out there who care desperately about their dog's dish, right? There's probably somebody on Etsy who does nothing but designs this. They're considered some kind of an expert. Are you connected to them? Have you been talking to them about, what the right glaze is to use so you don't poison your dog? Like, get involved, guys. So the other, and there are so many ways. I mean, there's Twitter, there's Quora. Get familiar with your writers. There is nothing more annoying to a journalist when they get a press release or an email that clearly is one of 500 that you just sent out to everybody. It says, here's our news today. Dear Mike, here's our news today. Please write about it. How much more intrigued would Mike be if you said, Mike, I read your story last week about X. I thought point 1 and 2 were interesting, but I thought you left this one question unsolved, and I bet your readers would like to know more. Here's my take. Shows you read it. Show that you care, you follow him. You're not just treating him as a means to an end. You're engaged. You are one of his readers. And stop for a minute. What matters to journalists? 2 things. They care about their editor. The editor is the person who decides whether the story goes in or not. It's kind of the umbrella person who says, okay, yes, we're going to cover that, but we're not going to cover that. Because journalists write stories, but that doesn't mean they always get posted. And the other thing they care about are readers. You are their readers. They care about you. So show them that you're reading, right? Show them. My dad lives in a small town in Vermont, but he reads The Economist and the Wall Street Journal. He writes them. He tells them that he's my dad. It's a little embarrassing, but it's really fun because he gets emails back, right? They care. He's a reader. So another tip is, if it's appropriate, is to get the press involved in actually your beta. Again, you might see that a journalist has a real soft spot for their dog. So why not get them involved? See if they want to test out your product. Doesn't always work. And they have a lot of things to do, but if they truly care, they might get involved. You'll get great feedback. Then you already have a champion. Of course, watch your competitors. You know this when you're doing it already. The actual pitch, again, we've talked about how to email. Again, tailor your pitch, because journalists hate Dear X. Be friendly and be concise and be honest. I've talked about the importance of honesty. We do have a back channel. We talk about who tells the truth and who doesn't. And also, a word about timing. If it's not a good time to email a journalist around 4 or 5 o'clock if they're with a daily paper. They are closing the paper. They are on deadline. Your stuff's going to get ignored. Also, Monday mornings, not usually good. They're coming into a flood of email. Yours just might get deleted by accident. Fridays, they're probably trying to get the hell out. So, think about doing it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a good rule. We also, I've talked about providing video assets, visuals, the links, etc. And another thing, do not be offended, especially at events like this, if you make an appointment with a journalist to meet and they cancel. If I got offended, I wouldn't be up here. because they cancel on us so often. Journalists are motivated by scoops, by breaking news. Something might push your story back. Do not be offended. Do not do not recriminate. Do not be angry with them. It's really their job. And like everybody, if you make them feel guilty, they're not going to come back to you that many more times. So be nice. Be nice. Be forgiving. So let's talk about startup competitions. I do a lot of them, right? And a few words about conferences, because usually startup competitions and conferences happen at the same time. Every once in a while, I see a company that goes to every single startup competition in a year, and every once in a while, I see one that comes that's going year after year. Guys, if you find yourself going to more than 3 or 4, there's probably there's a problem. There comes a point at which you need to be stepping out of the competition. So consider only doing 3 or 4. Oops, do we have a live mic somewhere? Yes. Yeah? Yeah. Live mic needs to go off. And then also, a word about conferences. My tips. These are gold. These exist because I've made every damn mistake out there. So learn from my mistakes. Don't let them happen to you. Let my sacrifice be something that saves you. These, again, you can follow. I will tweet these out. But guys, conferences are a huge investment of your time and of your money. You need to be present. You need to be there. You need to be trying to engage. It's a fantastic chance to catch people. But know who you want to talk to. When I go to a conference, God, this makes me sound really freaky, but I know who I want to talk to, and I know what I want to get out of them, right? You do too. Focus. I mean, the speakers are up there for you to know. You know who you want to talk to. You want to talk to a VC, and you know they're going to be here? Go get them, all right? So I will let these, again, all this content's good for you, but just remember it's a fantastic chance for you to engage, for you to ask, for you to be out there. And make the most of it, because this is a big investment. We could all be working on our companies right now, couldn't we? All right, let's talk about using PR to go international and my best tip. So I'm making an assumption that we're talking about English. This is new, and I want you guys to take a note of it. So you guys might know of a company called First Round Capital. They're American VC, and this is a platform for startups that they've developed. It's not live just yet. It's going live, I believe, in December. And it's for startups, specifically startups, to connect to reporters. There are platforms that allow companies to connect to reporters, but this is for you guys. Just as a reminder, the eyewear company Warby Parker really took off because it got a profile in GQ magazine. It's just little things like that that can really make a difference. So how this works is basically reporters will be able to put requests onto the platform, and what will happen is this will be curated, and so there'll be a back and forth. I really think if this takes off, and if we do what we're supposed to do, which is populate it with good companies, i.e. us, then you might have a fantastic back and forth. Granted, this will probably be a little bit more US focused, but most of you want attention in the US anyway. And the more we drag Europe into it, the faster the European journalists will get on board. So do your job, get on, sign up for this now, and let's populate it, all right? I really think this could, game changer, it's awfully interesting. I'm really pleased to see it up there. So, again, just a little bit, these are some of our clients. If you think I'm 4 types of crazy, feel free to talk to them and see if I did well by them. And just thanks. It's really a pleasure to be here. Right?
I think we have time for 2 questions, depending on the length. Who has questions for Colette?
Come on, ask the tough ones. Oh, I knew you were going to go.
She shouldn't.
Oh, you've been smiling all day. No.
So I'm lost, because you apparently did well to get into, so as a person who leads it, I want to see that
Totally fair. Yeah, totally fair. Just think about, here you go. What are you selling and who are you selling it to? Do you have a rough idea who that is? Okay, what do they read to get information? Okay, that's the media you need. There's your strategy. Basically you want to be targeting that media with stories. Figure it out. It's real simple. You don't need a big strategy that's 10 pages right now. Just what are you selling? Who are you selling it to? What are they reading? What influences that buying decision? And can you get into those publications with a meaningful story? Real simple. Oh, good. I'm glad you asked. Who else?
Colette.
Wait. Oh, we're out of time. Guys, please do follow me on Twitter. I'm at Colette Ballou. I will put the link up for this on SlideShare so you can have all the goodness. And again, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.